Hello everyone, I welcome you all again. And what we were discussing so far was the chapter first of class 10th, which is chemical reactions and equations. And we have discussed in the last session that how you can actually write the formula of various compounds, which is required for writing the chemical equations. And then we had discussed about the types of chemical reactions, and in that we had discussed about the combination reaction. Now, we will discuss in this session, we'll discuss about the next three types of a chemical reaction, which is decomposition reaction, displacement reaction, and double displacement reaction. And the fifth and the last type of a chemical reaction. So, what we are going to learn today, we are going to learn about the types of chemical reactions, the next three types basically, and which are the decomposition reaction, displacement reaction, and a double displacement reaction with their subsequent examples. We will also solve the NCERT questions which are related to these reactions. So let's start with three types of a chemical reaction. The first reaction is a decomposition reaction. Now decomposition means decomposing means breaking down. So whenever you see that your reactant is getting broken down into smaller fragments, your single reactant breaks down into smaller fragments, it is a decomposition reaction. So a decomposition reaction, a bigger molecule or a single compound breaks down into smaller elements or compounds. For example, this also you are going to observe or you're going to see in your laboratory. This is what you're going to do in your laboratory. What you will do, you will take a test tube and into that you are going to add a spatula of ferrous sulfate crystals. Okay, ferrous sulfate is FeSO, ferrous FeSO4. Okay, so you're going to add the crystals of ferrous sulfate. So these crystals of ferrous sulfate are green in color. Okay, I'm just telling you right now. These crystals that you will observe, please see that it will be a green in color. Now then what will you go? You will go towards the burner and you're going to burn these ferrous sulfate crystals in the test tube. So after some time what you will see that your green color crystals of ferrous sulfate has changed to brown color because of the formation of Fe2O3. And also when you bring the test tube near your nose, you're going to smell the odor of burning sulfur, and this odor of burning sulfur is because of the presence of sulfur dioxide gas and sulfur trioxide gas coming out of the test tube. So there will be two observations that you will see, that the ferrous sulfate crystals turn brown, and also there would be a smell of burning sulfur that would be produced in the test tube. So this is an example of a decomposition reaction in which a single reactant, ferrous sulfate, has broken down into many elements or compounds which are Fe2O3, SO2 and SO3, and this you will be doing this experiment in the laboratories. The another example is calcium carbonate. If you take a spatula of calcium carbonate and heat it, this you will see that calcium carbonate will change into calcium oxide and carbon dioxide gas will be evolved during that process. Also, if you take a spatula of lead nitrate, the lead nitrate spatula, if you put it in a test tube and heat that test tube, you will see that you will observe the formation of brown fumes along the sides or the walls of the test tube. This brown fumes is nothing but due to formation of NO2 gas. Okay, so because of the formation of NO2 gas, brown fumes are produced over the sides of the test tube. So in all these, can you see that in all of these, one single reactant has decomposed to many fragments, and such if somebody tells you, please just look into the equation and just tell me whether it's a combination or a decomposition. So you can always say that in combination you just see that there should be two reactants or more than two reactants present, right? But here there is only one reactant. So decomposition, this is nothing but decomposition reaction, and in decomposition reaction, please remember they are absolutely opposite to combination reaction. In absolute manner, I want to say that we said that in combination reactions are exothermic in nature, energy would be released in the form of heat or in the form of heat or energy or anything, but in decomposition reaction we actually supply heat. Okay, we are supplying heat in all of them. You can see we are supplying heat. Okay, so that this bigger fragment breaks down into smaller fragments. So since we are supplying heat, where the heat is getting absorbed by the reactants, such reactions, the decomposition reactions, are always endothermic in nature. The temperature of the test tube is going to decrease a little. So the endothermic reactions are the reactions in which energy is absorbed, opposite to exothermic reactions. So combination reactions are completely opposite to decomposition reactions. So there was an activity that is given in your NCERT book, and in that activity, what you have done is you have taken a plastic mug, okay, and you drill two holes at the base of it and fit rubber stops. So you have drilled two holes and you have fitted two rubber stoppers into the holes. Then what you do is you insert the graphite rods or carbon rods. Okay, they are one of the same things. So you insert the graphite rods. Okay, for the connection. Okay, this is what we are doing for the connection. Now connect these electrodes, the graphite rods that you have inserted. You connect them to a 6-volt battery. Okay. Then fill the mug with water such that the electrodes are immersed. So you're going to fill your mug with water so that the electrodes are immersed completely. Then you add a few drops of sulfuric acid to the water. You add sulfuric acid to the water. Take two test tubes filled with water and invert them over the two carbon electrodes. So what you're going to do is you're going to take two test tubes filled with water and you're going to invert it, just invert it over the graphite rods. You just inverted these test tube over the graphite rods. Switch on the current and leave the apparatus undisturbed for some time. So you will switch on the current and you will leave the apparatus undisturbed. What will you observe? You will observe the formation of some bubbles. There would be bubbles in both the test tubes. Now these bubbles are what basically? Now what has occurred? Till now just understand what has occurred. Actually, the water that you had taken in the test tube and inserted over the graphite rods, the water actually undergoes an electric decomposition. Okay, the water actually undergoes an electric decomposition to give me H2 gas and O2 gas. And since the H2 and O2 gases are produced, so these are gases. So here you will see that the hydrogen gas is produced at the cathode. This is cathode. This is cathode. So hydrogen gas bubbles would be observed at the cathode, and at the anode oxygen gas bubbles would be there. Why? Because the water that you have added into the test tube has undergone decomposition, electric decomposition, because of the electricity. So the energy that you had produced was not temperature energy, it was through electricity. So through electricity the energy is produced and H2O gets decomposed to form H2 and O2. So you will see bubbles of oxygen at anode and bubbles of hydrogen at the cathode. The next question, it says that is the volume of the gas collected the same in both the sides of the test tube? No, actually the volume of the gas, of the hydrogen gas, this volume, the volume of the hydrogen gas that you have collected would be twice the amount of oxygen gas. Why? Because you can see number 2, because this we have added to balance the equation. We have balanced the equation, right? So in order to balance the equation, we have to add 2, right? Because hydrogens were not balanced, oxygen is now balanced. So oxygen, let's say if it is 50 ml, right? So your hydrogen would be 100 ml, twice of it. If this 2 is not there for balancing, during the balancing, if I do not add this 2, right, if there is no need to add this 2, if the equation would have been balanced otherwise also, then the volume would be equal, 50 ml, 50 ml. But since we have multiplied this by 2, thus the oxygen volume, if it is 50 ml, for example, I have collected, the oxygen gas I have collected is 50 ml. So this would be twice of that, that would be 100 ml. So the volume of the hydrogen gas collected would be more than or twice the volume of oxygen gas. Now, the next question, if you once the test tubes are filled with respective, remove them carefully and test these gases one by one by bringing the burning candle close to the mouth of the test tube. So in both the test tube, in this hydrogen gas and this is oxygen gas, you remove these test tubes and bring the burning candle. Now when you bring the burning candle over the mouth of hydrogen gas test tube, okay, this test tube where hydrogen gas is evolved, if you bring the burning candle, the burning candle is going to burn with a popping sound. Okay, why it is going to burn with a popping sound? Because hydrogen gas is very explosive when it is mixed with atmospheric oxygen or air. So when you have actually inserted, if you've taken that out, the hydrogen gas is coming out of the test tube. So that hydrogen gas which is coming out of the test tube reacts with the atmospheric oxygen and it becomes explosive. And the burning candle, that is why it gives you a popping sound. If the burning candle is, or instead if I do not bring the burning candle over the mouth of the test tube where hydrogen gas is getting out, if I put it inside, try and keep it as much possible inside the vessel where hydrogen gas is coming out, okay, so the burning candle actually will extinguish. Okay, why it will extinguish? Because inside there is no supply of oxygen inside the test tube. We have see, in this particular activity we are not inserting the burning candle inside the test tube. We are bringing it over the mouth. So when you bring it over the mouth, the burning candle will burn with a popping sound. Okay, but if you keep, try and insert it inside the test tube, then it will extinguish automatically because there would be no supply of oxygen, and when there is no supply of oxygen, the hydrogen would be there as such, and it will extinguish the burning candle, because for burning of the candle we need oxygen supply, right? And if we bring the burning candle over the mouth of the other test tube where oxygen gas was getting evolved, the burning candle will burn brightly in presence of oxygen gas. So there would be just a bright burning when brought over the mouth of the test tube where oxygen gas was getting evolved. So this is what it is. Electricity has actually decomposed the H2O to H2 and O2 gases. So this is another example of decomposition reaction. Some more examples of decomposition reaction is that if you have silver chloride uh, uh, compound, a white compound in a bottle, and you keep it in a sunlight, then what you, after some time you're going to see that there would be a grayish coating over that you see over the walls of the bottle, and this gray coating is nothing but is happened due to the thermal decomposition, because in the presence of sunlight the thermal decomposition of silver chloride takes place and it will give me silver which is gray in color, and that is why the coating of the gray coating would be seen in the jar. Okay, so this is another example of decomposition reaction. Another example of decomposition reaction is that if you put or keep your silver bromide crystals bottle in the sunlight, again thermal decomposition will take place and you will see the bottle will have a grayish coating over its walls because of the formation of silver and Br2, and Br2 gas would be evolved. So this reaction was basically used in black and white photography as well. This decomposition reaction that we have discussed, this decomposition reaction is actually used in black and white photography. So next, this question is asked in the NCERT that a solution of substance X is used for whitewashing. Name the substance X. This we have done in the previous session, that substance X would be nothing but calcium oxide, because the calcium oxide when mixed with water gives me calcium hydroxide, and for whitewashing that calcium hydroxide is actually being applied over the walls of the ceilings and your home. Right. So the substance X is actually calcium oxide. Now you need to write the chemical reaction when the substance X reacts with water. So we all know, we have done many a times, that calcium oxide reacts with water to give me calcium hydroxide, slake lime, and slake lime is actually put over the or applied over the walls of the ceilings of your house. So far we have discussed about combination reaction, we have discussed about the decomposition reaction, and both the reactions are completely opposite to one another. And we have also said that by just looking at the equation you can say that whether the reaction is a combination reaction or a decomposition reaction. The next that we are going to discuss is a displacement reaction. So in displacement reaction, what happens? Displacement, that I am going to remove somebody from its place, that is called as displacing it. right? So in displacement reactions, what happens is a more reactive or a more stronger element, it displaces or replaces the less reactive element from its compound. So a more stronger element is going to displace the less reactive or less stronger element. This particular now reactivity or strongness of any element is basically dependent upon the reactivity series, and you need to memorize this reactivity series as well, and this is the trick to memorize it. Here this is the reactivity series in which you'll see different elements, and potassium is being the most reactive element and gold is the least reactive element. Okay, and to memorize it, the trick is, please stop calling me a careless zebra. Instead, try learning how copper saves gold. This is the trick to memorize the reactivity series of any element, so that we can know whether a displacement reaction, how a displacement reaction will take place, or which element can displace the other element. So the most reactive element or most stronger element can displace the less stronger element. The trick, please again remember, please stop calling me a zebra, a careless zebra. Instead, try learning how copper saves gold. This is how you're going to memorize it. And please remember, if I'm talking, let's say I talk about, there is a compound of zinc, okay, and there is a compound of copper. Okay, so I have zinc and let's say I have copper sulfate. So we all know like zinc plus copper sulfate. Now, can we say that a displacement reaction will take place or not? Will be dependent upon what is the reactivity of zinc, what is the reactivity of copper. So zinc is more reactive than copper. So you can see from the reactivity series, zinc is more reactive than copper. So what is going to happen? Zinc is going to displace the copper from copper sulfate solution, and it will actually react with sulfate ions. Zinc is going to react with the sulfate ions and copper will remain as such outside the solution. So what is going to happen is, your zinc plus copper sulfate will give you zinc sulfate plus copper, because copper is less reactive, so zinc is more reactive, so zinc is going to displace with can displace copper from its solution. But the opposite is not true. Let's say I have copper that reacts with zinc sulfate. Now copper, when it reacts with zinc sulfate, what is going to happen? Nothing is going to happen. Why? Because copper is less reactive than zinc. Copper is weaker than zinc, right? So copper will not be able to remove zinc from its solution, zinc sulfate solution. So no reaction will take place. So copper, when reacts with zinc sulfate, no reaction occurs. But when zinc reacts with copper sulfate, it will give me zinc sulfate and copper. So everything is dependent upon reactivity series. So displacement reactions are also dependent on reactivity series. So I'll give you more examples of displacement reaction. Let's say I have iron. So this also you are going to do in your practical notebooks, practical classes. That you are going to take a test tube where you're going to add an iron nail to that test tube, and then you're going to add 1 to 2 ml of copper sulfate solution, which is blue in color, and you shake it. When you shake it, after that what you're going to see, that the blue color of copper sulfate, it actually fades out and the solution turns pale green in color because of the formation of ferrous sulfate, FeSO4, and you will see brown little particles of copper in the solution itself, right? So brown particles of copper would be there. So why this has happened? Because iron is more reactive than copper. From the reactivity series, you all know iron is more reactive than copper, and as a result of it, iron can displace copper and it will react with the sulfate ions to give iron sulfate, and thus you will see that the solution color changes from blue to pale green. So two observations would be there whenever you do this experiment in your laboratory, that first the color blue changes to pale green, and the other thing is small brown particles of copper would be suspended in the solution. So blue color fades away. This we have just discussed, this example we have discussed. Another example is AgNO3, silver nitrate. So to a solution of, let's say you take some copper turnings, 1 or 2 copper turnings you add into the test tube, and to that you add silver nitrate solution. Since copper is more reactive than silver, obviously it is going to displace the silver from its silver nitrate solution, and it will result in the formation of copper nitrate and silver will be there. So the another kind of a chemical reaction, the second last type of a chemical reaction is a double displacement reaction. So double displacement, that is, there would be two displacements taking place. And what actually happens in double displacement reaction, that is, the reactants, they basically exchange their ions with each other and they form two new compounds in which one is insoluble or a precipitate. Always remember that whenever a double displacement reaction is taking place, the new compound that is formed, there would be two compounds that would be formed, but one of that compound would be an insoluble precipitate. That is, its particles would be suspended in the test tube. Okay, so this is a double displacement reaction. For example, this also you are going to do in the laboratory. You will be having sodium sulfate solution. So take 1 ml of sodium sulfate solution. To that add dropwise barium chloride solution. After that shake it, and what you're going to see, you're going to see the presence of white precipitates of barium sulfate. So what has actually happened? The barium ions has displaced the sodium ions to form barium sulfate, and the sodium ions displaces the barium ions to form sodium chloride, NaCl. Right, so this would be present in the solution itself, but barium sulfate, white precipitates, you're going to see of barium sulfate in the test tube. So this insoluble precipitate formation is an essential criteria for a double displacement reaction. So if somebody says, how can you differentiate between a displacement and a double displacement reaction, please remember, in a displacement reaction only one exchange takes place. There would only be a single exchange. In all of these there would be a single exchange. But in double displacement reaction, two exchanges are happening. Barium is exchanging with sodium and sodium exchanging with barium. So there are two ionic exchanges are happening. Another important thing is there is no precipitate formation in displacement reaction, but there is a precipitate formation always in a double displacement reaction. So just by seeing to the reaction, you can say whether the reaction is a displacement or a double displacement reaction. And when we say that a precipitate is formed, that precipitate will remain in the solution, and the precipitate formation is always demarcated or denoted by an arrow pointing downwards. If this arrow would have pointed upwards, then there would be a gas evolution, but these are the particles that remain inside the solution, then the arrow points downwards. This is the prerequisite. Another example is if you take silver nitrate solution, to that you add sodium chloride solution, then also you will see the formation of white precipitate of silver chloride, and this will be remaining in the solution itself. Another example is, this is also an activity given in your NCERT book, that if you have a lead nitrate solution, so take 1 to 2 ml of lead nitrate solution, to this add dropwise potassium iodide solution, then what is going to happen? You're going to see the potassium ions are going to displace the lead from its lead nitrate solution, and the lead ions are going to displace the potassium ions from its potassium iodide solution, and you will get the formation of yellow precipitate of lead iodide that would be there, and potassium nitrate will remain in the solution as such. So here these are all the examples of double displacement reaction, and whatever reactions we are discussing and we will be discussing in future also, please you all try and write the equations, try and balance them, write their physical states, so that there should be a practice of writing chemical equations, because most of the time you after a activity is given to you, you are asked to write the equation for that activity as well, like for lead iodide. So this you need to write the equation also. So you should memorize or practice it by heart, that how the equations can be written. So this is all what we are going to do. We have talked about the 4 types of chemical reactions, and we will talk about the 5th type of a chemical reaction in the next session. Thank you.